Welcome on into the Fantasy Football Forge. Happy Wednesday, I believe it is today. And today we're going to be going through having a selection from the middle portion of the first round, of course, middle portion of the draft, talking about picks 4 through 7 in a 10-team league. This will be the final video for the 10-team league, so you can go check the catalog on the YouTube page for early draft picks, late draft picks, if that's what you're interested in. Those were released last week. Now we're looking at the middle portion of the draft, and this will probably be a little bit of a quicker video because there's a lot of, I think, flexibility, a lot of being able to wait and just see who's available and taking advantage of that, which of course means you want to keep yourself open so you don't paint yourself into a corner, as is always the best strategy. I did an ESPN draft lately where I tried pressing my luck, kind of painted myself into a corner, and the team's risky for my quarterback and tight ends position specifically. So that can happen to you if you try to press your luck sometimes. So that's where, you get those quarterbacks, tight ends early. Sometimes, man, might make life a little bit easier of not having to try to pinpoint when the run happens. But that's 12 team. This is 10 team. A little bit easier, a little less demand, especially for those quarterbacks and such. So what's going to be my advice for how you're supposed to draft from the middle portion of the draft? Well, it'll help if you understand exactly what you're looking at, right? So I have each draft up top here, or each round up here, which picks are listed, picks 44 through 47 in the fifth round here. Actually, let's work from the fourth round example because I have that written down, which picks are what here. So for the color coding, the yellow color code is going to be like you're in range, literally in range of where you're picking via the ADP via both Fantasy Pros and Sleeper. I use both those sources to help come up with this list. Now, here are the numbers. So for that fourth round draft pick, anything between picks 34 and 37.9 would have been in range. Anything in orange is going to be from picks 32 to 33.9, ADP, I should say 32 to 33.9, and there's a doubtful range, less likely to be available for you, but of course might be because these are just ADPs, they're just averages, and that's not so far off here, are going to be the players between picks 30 and 31, and then it goes the opposite way over here for a more likely to be available and a highly likely to be available is the color coding system. And in instances where you see maybe red to orange on one platform, one of the ADPs would have been at least below 31.9 or less, and on one of the other platforms the ADP would have been between 32 to 33.9. So that is how you're going to get these multicoloring schemes. In some instances, a player might be in range on one platform and they might be in this doubtful range on a different platform, then they would just have been listed as the questionable in an orange, like Sam Laporta. So there you go. They're listed in order from the coloring after via like the ADPs that I got from them as well, and likely of order that they're drafted in. So that's what we're looking at on this chart. I hope that makes enough quick sense to you. I think it's fairly intuitive. And so this is the list that we find to be the most likely players to be available that you also, according to the crowd, would be interested in drafting in these areas of each round. Now, one area I've been kind of starting off with when I look at this is to determine, am I interested in a quarterback or a tight end at any point? Is it going to be really, really tough for me to rely on that if I'm going in with a strategy? Which, by the way, I always remain flexible, but at least this can help you to form some sort of strategy going in. And in this case, I've been pretty strictly, I don't want to take a tight end or a quarterback in the second round. Third round, maybe Trey McBride's there if you really like him, but I like somebody actually better than him and is a better value than him who's more likely to be available here in round 4 than that, so I'm really not going to rely on that too much. Lamar Jackson very well could be available. Jaden Daniels should be available. Josh Allen will probably be gone, but he might be available. Whereas in the fourth round, we get in part of that tier potentially, actually, in the example draft that I'm going to show you. Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts were all available. So you just never know. Like I said, these are the players who are within range of possibly being there, and Jaden Daniels was there in that example. this is where I am planning on popping off on a quarterback or a tight end in 10-team league if I'm drafting from this spot, because it's very likely that at least one of these guys will be available. So if I go in with the plan of that 4th round, I can really sketch out the rest of my draft plan based on knowing that I'm going to be grabbing one of those at that point in the draft. And you don't really want to grab both a quarterback and a tight end early in a draft. George Kittle could maybe be available here in the 5th round, but that's becoming less and less likely. George Kittle even sometimes going later 3rd round. So you can't really rely on that anymore. And Jalen Hurts were to be available here and you went tight end here, I suppose then maybe you're in a pickle thinking about it, possibly. I still think that there's probably going to be some guys that I like a little bit more than going quarterback at that point. But Jalen Hurts is in this same tier here as Burrow, who I'd be very excited to get at pick 5 in round 5, even round 6. He used to be able to had, I should say. So, to each their own on how you're going to draft. But as far as my draft plan, I'm saying round 4, give me one of them quarterbacks or tight ends, and I'll make it work the rest of the way. Now, here is kind of the draft plan that I came up with right in this row. And oftentimes I've worked backward, starting with round 6 to try to put myself in the best position. Now, the one thing that you probably noticed is I basically, if not always, have said wide receiver with my 1st round pick, because I do like grabbing wide receiver with my 1st round pick. What I will say, running back with that 1st round pick, fine. Absolutely fine. I've made several teams with that, going that route, and really thought that those teams were strong. And I always really find myself wanting several of these 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th round wide receivers, all the more reason maybe to go running back heavy. Like, that's something that by the time draft day comes for a lot of us, I might change up that plan. Another thing, I really like going CeeDee Lamb here. I also really like getting George Pickens and then having both of them on my roster like I do in the example roster. It's not optimal. I don't necessarily mind it because I am pretty high up on both of them, but also it limits the ceiling of the team a little bit, right? And an injury to Dak Prescott, suddenly you got 2 guys affected by that you drafted fairly highly in a draft. So there's definitely added risk there in doing that I should probably heed a little bit more. Nonetheless, let's start off with this 6th round here. I look at the available players. I love me some George Pickens here over much of this group. If Metcalf, Sutton are still available, I'll take them. I am fine with taking a chance on Tedroll McMillan or Jameson Williams if you like them more. Xavier Worthy has moved up my draft board with the Rashee Rice news that the team apparently is preparing for a 4-game suspension for Rashee Rice. So that's fairly significant. And then, of course, the other receiver there, Marquise Brown, is currently injured. I don't think it's extremely severe. It's his ankle. Not that means it's not severe. My understanding is that it is not severe. However, I did hear someone say that in a show about fantasy football, I think today. So I looked into it. I didn't see anything to say I should be extra concerned about that, outside of the fact that Marquise Brown can't seem to stay healthy for some time now. So, I mean, really, since he got drafted, he came into the league injured. So for the 6th round, I ended up saying it's open depending on what I've done before that. I'm not locking myself into wide receiver or running back. I like a lot of the options. James Conner is a fantastic option. I'm very high up on R.J. Harvey. I think taking a chance on TreVeyon Henderson could pay off. I don't think it's as likely as he pays off as these guys, but would be fine. Of course, David Montgomery, I think he'll be lesser so this year, but we're not way overdrafting him or anything. Joe Mixon, big time risk right now. DeAndre Swift, I think, is a fine draft pick, but he's somebody I would rather get like in the 7th if possible. So I lean wide receiver here a little bit, but that's in part because George Pickens is going to be available, and I'm pretty high up on him there. Then when we go to the 5th round, the same thing. We look at the available players. So I have this weird thing this year where I'm not different in ranking Mike Evans, Devontae Adams and DJ Moore. I'm pretty much in line with ADP, maybe even higher on one of them. I don't know. That would be Devontae Adams if so. Then ADP, then the expert consensus. but I also just don't really feel super comfortable with him. And I think that the likelihood that George Pickens were to be as good as Devontae Adams, better, Mike Evans, better, is not very unlikely. I think it's very possible. So I do like these guys, but I find myself not really ended up drafting them because there are some guys that I can usually get probably later, or even here, DK Metcalf I actually have ranked quite highly. I also don't feel ultra confident in him, but I think his chances are no worse than a Mike Evans or Devontae Adams. So I like the wide receivers here. Omarion Hampton, I still like quite a bit. I have him one spot ahead of Breece Hall. I think my running back 14. I had him up to like running back 11, moved them back just a little bit with the offensive line concerns, but I'm not overall too concerned, and it's really nice that they had Joe Alt that they could bring over that left tackle. Of course, second year, played right tackle last year. We'll see. But I do like these running backs. I'm fine with taking a shot on James Conner here. I think I have Ken Walker ranked higher, but I don't end up ever seeming to get him because probably take DK Metcalf over that. And Alvin Kamara, I like. I got him a lot more earlier on in the offseason. I think his ADP has risen just a slight bit to where he's not falling as far as he used to. But nonetheless, I lean running back here a little bit because I leaned wide receiver here. But you know me, my fifth round wide receiver, a lot of times it ends up being like DK Metcalf probably. And then we got this figured out. Quarterback, tight end, I have no problem with these guys. But, there are concerns. James Cook back in practice as of today, as of recording this. I've expected that. I have not wavered with my draft rank on him. I'm on the higher end of him, but I think in line with like ADP on him. I like him as a draft pick still. People say, oh, regression, 16 touchdowns last year. Yeah. The fact that he's able to get 16 touchdowns is not a fluke, though. That's because of the system, the team that he's on. The opportunity will once again be there to get a lot of touchdowns, even if it's not 16. He's a very good running back. I think he's been top 12 the last 2 seasons. I just so much hate on him. There was hate on him last year, too. He outproduced that hate. I expect him to once again at least produce up to ADP, very much so. But I just always hear negative news around him. When we look at the wide receivers in this range, maybe you like them more than I do, but I really more so want like these top 2 that are the least likely to be available. Terry McLaurin's. I think that situation will get resolved, but I still never find myself drafting him, even though I do have him ranked fairly well. And none of these guys overly excite me outside of like Rashee Rice, but I'm just a little lower on Rashee Rice because I think I can get guys who are very close to how much I like Rashee Rice a little bit later. And so I find myself usually going some other route, and somebody else ends up getting him before me, but I'll be open to drafting him, especially if he's your wide receiver 4, but wide receiver 3, a little less likely. 2 wide receiver league, not a huge deal. We can come up with some players here that can start for us early season just fine. In the third round here, once again, copping out here, flex. It depends what I've done up to this point with my first 2 picks because, well, we're going to have another flex there. So when we look at the third round, I have now bumped up Chase Brown to where I'm drafting him over Ladd McConkey if they're both available. That is a decision I believe that I had in this draft, maybe. And so I like the running backs, especially if Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor are available. That's nice. If A.J. Brown's available here, that's really nice. Then I've got some tough decisions to make that, once again, it's just going to depend on what did I take with these first 2 picks. Hopefully it was like wide receiver and wide receiver, so that way it makes it a little bit easier if one of these guys are available. Nonetheless, third round, pick your favorite player once again. Just go with the flow, pick your favorite player, and if there is a tiebreaker that needs to be made, maybe there's a reason that you could say, well, I'm just going to go running back here because I already have my top 2 wide receivers. And totally open to a flex. I have no real preference here. I did have the decision to make between Drake London and Devon Achane in my draft because I started out with a wide receiver. I went Devon Achane. It was pretty close. ADP would also say Devon Achane, and I like Achane a lot. But I will say, Drake London, a little bit safer. I'm not too concerned about injury, nearly as concerned about injury. I mean, the quarterback situation, injury, okay, well, going to bring in a veteran quarterback behind him if Michael Penix were to go down. Now, I have a little bit of concern of if Michael Penix will live up to our hopeful expectations for him as a quarterback, but not overly concerned about that. I also like A.J. Brown more than them, and he's supposed to be very available. So there's going to be guys here that I'm going to like. And if Nico Collins or Brian Thomas Jr. are available, that's also very nice. But, I mean, if a lot of the guys you like here are taken and it's Jonathan Taylor that you're drafting in the second round, whoop-de-doo! How terrible is that? So, it's the second round. It's the middle portion of it. There are names available. Take your favorite one. I don't care. Wide receiver or running back. Just don't go quarterback or tight end. There's too many good options available, especially at 10 team here. And to start off, we are going to go wide receiver. You could go running back. So when we run the simulation on Fantasy Pros, and I jumble up what sources the ADPs are coming from, all of them I use. That gives us the most random outcome. It's supposed to, at least. This is what I end up with. In the first round, I got CeeDee Lamb, of course, because I do. But it was at pick 6. I went from pick 6. CeeDee Lamb was still there. That's like his ADP. I do still think it might rise, but I don't know. Maybe it's not going to, because I would have thought that we'd seen that rise a little bit more at this point. Justin Jefferson's injuries happened for a little while now. But it could be one of those late risers. I hear some chatter from some of the professionals out there that might help to push it up just a little bit more yet. So by draft day, he might not be available at pick 6, but pick 4 or 5, very possible. And round 2, I already talked to you about that. I had the decision between Drake London, Achane, higher upside, safer pick. I went for the upside. We're trying to win a championship, and I took a wide receiver in the first round, so we'll start off a little bit more evenly. And kind of playing the numbers a little bit, well, not really here. Round 3, scratch what I just said. I do have flex leaning running back here because I am, but Chase Brown is who I end up going with. I find myself really, really happy to get Chase Brown there. Even late second in some situations, depending on who's gone off the board. But early third, mid third, give me him all day. Love it. He was available in this version that I did. Like I said, round 4, George Kittle was gone, one of the guys more likely to be available, but not in this version of the draft that I did. However, one of the guys not so likely to be available, once again, not insanely out of possibility of being available here, was Jaden Daniels. And so I took Jaden Daniels because my plan was to go quarterback, tight end. One tight end I thought I would be interested in gone anyways. And Jaden Daniels. I do have a tier above these two, despite it not being a big tier break in my mind. So my biggest concern for Jaden Daniels would just be injury concern. So he's one who, when I draft him early, I really don't like drafting an early quarterback and a backup quarterback. I'm willing to go into the season, especially 10 team, with just one quarterback. That's not what I ended up doing in this case because there came a point in the draft where I thought, hey, Dak Prescott looks pretty nice here. And if Jaden Daniels, if the Terry McLaurin thing goes south for Jaden McDaniels, if he gets injured, any of the above, something weird happens, there's just regression generally. He's not as good as he was last year. I have Dak Prescott, who I can just run through the matchups and hope that between the two of them they stay healthy when the other one might be injured at some point. Round 5, so we've got CeeDee Lamb, Devon Achane, Chase Brown, Jaden Daniels so far on the roster. 2 running backs, 1 wide receiver. And I do lean flex running back. I do lean taking a running back at this point. I looked at what's available. There are lots of good running backs available at this point, as there will still hopefully be some here that I really like in terms of just like targets. So I decided to pass on those and take my boy DK Metcalf. My boy. I won't quite call him that. But I decided to take the chance on DK Metcalf and what that could potentially look like for my wide receiver 2 spot, because I figured out of all those running backs that were there, I think somebody's going to fall to me into the next round. Even though I like taking wide receiver at pick 6, it's 10 team, so there's a little higher bit of a chance that some of those guys who I might take here will be available anyways in the 7th and 8th round. Play the game. I took R.J. Harvey. I took R.J. Harvey here. He was available. Some of the other guys that got taken, and I thought, what a nice, lovely upside pick to add to my other running back room there. And then for the rest of the draft, I got George Pickens in the 7th, Calvin Ridley in the 8th, Jordan Mason 9th. I assume this is in order of the rounds that I took him. Jacoby Myers in the 10th, Dak Prescott in the 11th, Austin Eckler 12th, and then Tyler Warren, Dalton Kincaid in the 13th. I feel like Eckler probably got taken after the tight end, so maybe that wasn't perfectly in order that I took them, but well, why wouldn't it have been? So, quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels. Oh, you know what? I did take Tyler Warren then, because then it's DST and kicker. I didn't bother telling you who I got there. So those were my final 2 routes. So quarterbacks, I got Jaden Daniels and Dak Prescott on this roster. Wide receivers are CeeDee Lamb, DK Metcalf, George Pickens, Calvin Ridley, and Jacoby Myers. And I'm pretty comfortable in my flex spot working out with Pickens, Ridley, and Myers. And I have some running backs who I would also feel comfortable in flex spots. My running back room, I drafted evenly wide receivers and running backs here. Achane, Chase Brown, RJ Harvey, Jordan Mason, and Austin Eckler. So I took those high upside picks in the beginning. I'm hoping that they stay healthy. I didn't really take... I mean, RJ Harvey's like a risky high upside pick, I believe. But then Jordan Mason and Eckler are just going to solidify the back end of that room. And if there's an injury ahead of either of those two, they could be very useful for periods of time within the season, or if that injury is major, maybe even more than that. So there is still some upside with those 2 picks, as well as the fact that they just give me a nice, safe weekly floor if the running back situation doesn't change in either of those cities. And for the wide receivers, I got my guys. I like them, and Jacoby Myers, just a nice, safe pick there that gives me, once again, that nice, safe floor. And for the tight ends, I have Kincaid over Warren, but ADP was Warren, so I think I drafted Tyler Warren, but I would personally draft Dalton Kincaid. That's my strategy here. It's really just to stay open and fluid as to what's coming to you, because I continue to like him. And if you agree with me, if you can get George Pickens, Calvin Ridley, 7th, 8th round, feel free to go with 3 running backs here in these first 6 rounds, I would say, and a little bit lower on the wide receiver. However you want to spread that out, I really don't mind. At every turn here in the middle of the draft in 10-team leagues, I'm pretty darn happy with what's happening, what's coming to me. So I think this is a nice spot to be drafting from. I really found myself overwhelmed with all the options. So there you go. That's going to be it for this video, guys. Come, like, comment, subscribe on the video and stuff. And I don't think I did an announcement at the beginning of the video, so you're welcome for that. But Tuesdays and Thursdays, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, come mock draft with us. Should be no bots at any point. Last week we had, I think, 1 or 2 bots in our second mock draft. Hoping to do some 12-teamers this week, because my draft's coming up. One of my drafts is coming up on Saturday, an in-person draft, so I could use some practice in 12-team. I'm struggling 12-team from pick 4. I believe it is. I don't know. I haven't quite nailed it down yet, and I think that's where I'm going to be. Actually, I don't know. That might be my pick 11. Doesn't matter. Peace out. Love you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.